Greetings and welcome back to another episode of the Daily Run, and today we're playing as Eden. This start is just absolutely amazing. You can see that our stats, our damage, our tear delay, basically everything is just outstanding. That's probably due to the fact that we also have the halo, but just the overall start and all of the items and the things that we got is exquisite. So we got the halo, which is obviously just a great item on its own, especially early on, because the damage up that you get early is much more influential than when you get it later. Also, it helps that you get some speed alongside that, maybe some tear delay and also some range. But with what's maybe the bread and butter was Diplopia, and I've never actually considered starting with it, but it actually makes for a very interesting decision. At which point would you like to use Diplopia? So you want to use it early on maybe something like a shop so you can get more consumables or maybe some items for free, or maybe you want to use it on a very particular item so you can double its effectiveness early on, and that maybe can help you just deal with enemies a bit better. Obviously you can go for those late game plays where you use Diplopia and something like boss rush, or maybe you wait for that Dream Devil deal in order to make it work. So there's a lot of decisions that need to be made, or at least a lot of decisions that you need to consider before you decide to use it. I decided to use it very early on in the very first shop, and the main reason for that was that it was a very unique shop in some sense. It was a shop that had 2 lucky pennies and also 2 items in it, and both of those items were decent. They were Chaos and Blue Map. Blue Map is great because it allows you to see where the secret rooms and the second secret rooms are, and I thought having that early, especially on the first floor, would allow me to visit those rooms and maybe discover an AWAS room. I think it's much more important to do this just because this is a run that goes only to Mom, and basically if I can kind of increase my chances to find a way forward, I think it's usually worth it. And also alongside that, not only are we getting 2 lucky pennies, we're getting 4, so that means that suddenly our negative luck, which was the only negative stat that we had, is now at 3.3, which is gonna boost the way we're gonna get our consumables, our money, and obviously if we have something like Chaos, we would want more money because we picked up Chaos very early on, which is not something that I would normally do, but I thought just because this is the first floor, not only does that allow us so that the shops from that point on will be much better on average, because that means we can get items from basically every item pool, but having more luck early on will allow us to get more consumables, and with that more money, which we can spend to buy those items in the shop. So it worked out very well in the sense that it was just very synergistic in some sense. Maybe you need to know about the game mechanics a bit, and maybe it requires some thought, but I do really think that this is one of those cases where Chaos early on, alongside with the other items that we got, was probably the perfect start on a run that you could possibly want. And of course, with that said, it was definitely what carried the run. I'm not sure how the run would have looked like without Chaos, obviously, but with Chaos it did actually turn out to be really, really good. Not only did we get Spawn rather early on and just a lot of syringes, we also got a bunch of synergies, which I really enjoyed. Euthanasia Shot is one of those items that was added in Afterbirth Plus, and alongside that, Afterbirth Plus did add a lot of nice tier synergistic items. So if you have tiers, you can get a lot of really cool items which have very unique effects, and Euthanasia is one of those. If Euthanasia kills an enemy with a needle, so there's like a chance that you'll shoot a needle, and if it does, it fires a Tammy's head type of shot, and if those kill an enemy, then they fire again. So it's a really neat effect. It doesn't really work as often as you would expect it to, but when it does work, when you can get that chain of tears and bullets flying around, it actually is pretty fun. Of course, it does suffer from the same problem that a lot of Afterbirth Plus items do, that it doesn't really have any synergies, but thankfully, because we only have regular tears, we don't have to worry too much about that. Of course, with Chaos, you can expect to get a lot of bomb items, which wasn't even necessarily that bad in this particular case, because, like I said before, we had the blue map, which means we need bombs to actually get to the shops, and they did come in pretty handy very early on. Of course, at this point, we do already have enough to kind of sustain ourselves until the rest of the game, probably, but just early on, they did help that I did get some of those bomb items. Later on, those bomb items, actually, and synergies, they did not only help me go to the dark room, but I would say that they carried me in a lot of cases, just because our damage output isn't necessarily that high. At this point, even though it's 7.7, we do have some fun synergies, and our tear delay is actually pretty decent. I would still say that this isn't enough to really kind of get us going and really start dealing and a lot of damage, and especially with those tougher enemies that come later. But with sad bombs and all of those other synergies, I was obviously able to make it work just a little bit better. With Chaos, I also didn't expect to find Mama Mega, and I didn't think I would have to. Mama Mega is obviously pretty great whenever you have something like Harsh and Boss Rush. Whenever you make it to, you would use Diplopia on that, and maybe you use both of those, or maybe in an ideal world, what you would do is save Mama Mega for the Harsh floor, so womb 2 or utero 2, you would use it then, because womb 2 or utero 2 is naturally a much harder floor than the depths 2 is when you find mom. But in this case, because we only go to mom, we don't really have to worry about that, which means that if you do get Mama Mega, and luckily I did, which was just a huge stroke of luck again, I'm beginning to think that Mama Mega isn't the most fair item in dailies. Up until this point, or like until 3 dailies before, I actually didn't use it very much. I just thought, not only is it a bit unfair, I also thought it's not really fun to be locked into a very certain specific active item, and because of that, I was looking for other items. I was trying to maybe find some fun synergies, or maybe just have a more intricate and much more different run than usual, and I thought that Mama Mega doesn't really fit in that category of the runs that I would like to have. But in this case, because it has presented itself a few times in the past few dailies, I decided to stick with it, and I thought maybe just to test it out, just to see how it goes. And it really is breaking in a sense that it just negates every single opportunity and every single decision that you have to make as a player in Isaac. You don't have to rush anymore, you can take your time to get as many coins as possible. And in this particular case, I did use the Bloody Penny with the Ivy bag and all of the hearts on the floor to just play it a lot of times to get really a lot of coins. It's not at breaking point at all, so I'm not gonna just get 15,000 track bonus, but it does help immensely. You can see that even by just getting here, I'm at 18,000 points, and that's like 4,000 higher than you would expect if I had just rushed here, and that's obviously partly due to just using the Ivy bag to get a lot of coins and money, but also that's due to the fact that I was able to have enough time to explore the entirety of the previous floors, because I knew that I can be late and still actually make it to boss rush because of Mama Mega. So it's one of those items that is both very fun and just rewarding to use, because it really does feel like you're maximizing your points and efficiency as you go throughout the run, but at the same time, even though it's very fun and unique to use, it still restricts you in a lot of ways, and I don't think it really has a place in dailies. Mama Mega is definitely one of those controversial items that some people think it's a good addition, some people think it's not a good addition. I would say that it's a good addition if you can't force it to spawn. And with 3 stock machines, I think if you remove those, I think that makes it just a bit more fair. I think it falls into tandem with items like the shovel, where maybe it's not necessarily the best item in the game, but with dailies it does tend to work particularly well, especially if you have some other synergies or breaking synergies that go alongside that. But obviously I wouldn't be too opposed to just removing it entirely, like the shovel. I think they are items that maybe cause too much trouble and they're worried, but at the same time, I can see the value of just having items like this in dailies, because it feels good to use them. It feels good to find the shovel, it feels good to find Mama Mega, and these items aren't that good in just single player mode, but in dailies they do shine, and I do like that change of pace, or at least how different items work differently in dailies than in just regular runs. I think to some point that has to be valued. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm just overthinking this, maybe I'm being too lenient on these items that just cause suffering and pain to all of the daily players out there, but I do feel like there needs to be some merit to rebalancing. Obviously, I'm not even sure those balance changes are gonna occur. We did get the statement from Edmund and Tyrone, I think I tweeted at them that they're looking into it, and maybe, I'm not sure what that means, because with companies nowadays, you can expect people to look into it, but obviously to invest resources and their time to fix something, especially when they have other things to worry about, is probably not something that is not fair from us to expect, but also we shouldn't hold in judgment. Obviously, everything that they would do or change is just sign of their goodwill, and we should be thankful for that. But as it is now, I don't have too much of a problem with it. I think at this point, I've beginning to realize that dailies are... First of all, I do still think that they're a pretty good representational skill. Maybe a different type of skill than you would get used to just regular runs, but I would still say that the best daily players are just the best Isaac players in general. The amount of thought and just quality that goes into thinking on how you're gonna maximize your score is an interesting concept, and I definitely think if you're gonna value or at least measure how good someone at player is, you don't really have a lot of ways of going about it. You can just look at their maximized score or just their average score. You can look at how fast they go through the levels, or maybe you can look at their win streak. And obviously, if you're playing for different objectives, you're gonna play the game very differently. So trying to go fast, you might not even pick up some items, the whole meta would change. But of course, if you're trying to just get as much win streaks as possible, what that would result in is that you would basically never go to boss rush, or you would never even do harsh, because those floors just are optional and then tend to be too hard. So again, your strategy would be much different. I don't think any of these options, or at least ways to measure skill, so to say, are bad or good. They're just different, and I think it's more for us to realize that I think a lot of people do mention that Isaac dailies are not a true representation of skill, but I would say that it's actually one of the most skillful parts of the game. I know, maybe a bit of a controversial opinion, but I definitely think that people who perform well in dailies, at least somewhat consistently, do know their way around Isaac, and I do tend to find, at least with those people, not myself maybe, but those top 50, maybe top 10 people are really just amazing at the game, and not only not with their knowledge and how much they know about the game, but also mechanically. The fact that someone can go through these dailies and only get hit something like 5 times in total is just amazing to me. I consider myself to be pretty knowledgeable about the game, but mechanically, there's no way that I'm not going to be taking like 10 hits of damage, at least on an average Afterbirth Plus daily, just because of how hard some of these rooms are. That's maybe my fault, maybe I'm not used to the game enough, and I have only played it for something like 600 hours, where other people have played it for almost twice as much. But still, this is the world we live in. So we're coming to the end of the daily here. I didn't really talk about much of that, since I think I've kind of instigated, or at least talked about what this daily would entail earlier on. But at this point, what definitely helped were all the bomb synergies. Obviously, we also had some tier synergies, so with said bombs, we can just pop a bomb down and expect the room to die pretty much instantly because of how much damage we're doing with those bombs and tiers combined and things like that. So it did turn out to be pretty well, and I also enjoyed it because it was fun. I always enjoy whenever you have a daily which is maybe not necessarily super strong, but it's just strong enough so you can get through these rooms. And not only that, it's even better if you have some form of synergy, or maybe some form of unique item on top of that. That kind of makes it a bit more varied, so to say, whenever you're walking from room to room. And there's really nothing more satisfying than having a chain of euthanasia shots, just tears exploding anywhere, and they're dealing a lot of damage that way. What kind of put the cherry on the top was the golden bombs, which just means that we can use them pretty much infinitely many times. We don't really have to worry about them, and the lamp went down pretty much without too much of a hassle. You can expect it because this is a mom daily, and because I made it to the lamp, my score is gonna be naturally higher, and that's probably true for every single daily. If there's a mom daily and you just make it to the lamp, even if you haven't played particularly well, you can expect to rank in the top 100, just because a lot of people won't find a way to go forward. I think this particular case, the ways to go forward were pretty obvious, or at least very accessible, because there were a lot of AWAS rooms lying around in second single rooms and just randomly. But also, when you go to the womb 1 or utero 1 or whatever, if you just go to the secret room, one of the buttons produces a path to go down to womb 2, and from womb 2 you can take the sacrifice room to go to the lamp. So even though it might seem a bit convoluted to get here, it wasn't that bad, and I do think that in this particular case a lot of people will actually make it this far. Because of Mama Mega, I was able to get a lot of exploration bonus. I was also able to beat boss rush because of that, and because of the dark room also got the lamp bonus. So overall, just a huge amount of points. 40,000 for a mom daily is just overwhelmingly good. Maybe our end score is something like in the top 10 again, which is just super exciting, because I always enjoy whenever I preach, I talk about what good daily practices are and how you're supposed to play the daily. But if I have a bad daily while I'm talking about them, that's maybe not the most genuine thing. But when I do actually end up with a good score, then I think my words have a little bit more merit, and that's really great, because I do wish to maybe share some of the strategies and thoughts with you, because I think that this case, it's very deep. A lot of Isaac dailies and just runs in general do end up turning into very deep conversations about the game and game design, and I really enjoyed it, and I do think there's some merit to that. So with that said, I hope you enjoyed this one, guys, and I hope to see you next time.